All right. Hey there, Bucs fans. Casey Phillips, Scott Smith here with the Raise the Flags podcast. We decided the 10-part documentary wasn't enough. We wanted to dive into it even further now that we've gotten to see it.
We should have our say.
Yes. I want to react to this as a fan, as a reporter. I'm so excited. I've been so excited to watch it. And it 100% lived up to the hype. You and I took different approaches. I just binged all of it straight through. You're going to watch these kind of as we talk about them.
I want it to be fresh in my mind.
Fresh in your mind.
I've skimmed them all.
Yes.
But I've only watched fully while taking notes the ones that we're going to be talking about. So I want it to be fresh.
Okay, great. So again, reminder, if you have somehow stumbled upon this video and have not seen, at least for this one, episodes 1 and 2 of the Raise the Flags documentary on Amazon Prime, pause this, go watch that, and then come back here. So again, spoiler alerts
big time
abound.
Big time spoiler
Although
alert.
Also I think most Bucs fans know the general history of the team. So that's what's cool too. It's not like spoiler alert, we have won 2 Super Bowls.
But I think that gets right to the point of this. And that is, we do know as Bucs fans the big moments. We know all the signposts along the way. You know, we know about the 95 draft and the Super Bowl and anything that you can think of, the Bo Jackson situation, the Doug Williams situation, but we don't really know everything. And we don't know how some of the people involved in that felt and how they feel about it now. And it stirs up emotions for you as Bucs fans because you get to relive like the Rondé Barber thing, but then there's more about it that you didn't know.
Yeah, and that's the most exciting part is just when you think you know all Bucs history, there's always more to know. And I say that is the way we know this was a successful thing was that you, the resident team historian, learned things as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is just, they've done an incredible job. So we're going to basically do 5 of these covering 2 episodes each. And we're going to just give our thoughts, what we take away from it. We also are going to have an interview with the director, Trent Cooper, each episode to break down some of his behind-the-scenes sides of it. And we're going to play some clips from a sneak peek event that we had. It was called the Raise the Flags documentary premiere sneak peek that we had at Tampa Theater back earlier this season. We wanted to wait for the documentary to actually come out before we started unveiling some of those. But a huge portion of that event is now available on the Buccaneers YouTube. We're going to show a few little clips from that as well to dive even deeper.
That was basically you taking a lot of legends of the franchise through the history, right?
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, it was basically they showed 5 different clips from the documentary that were done at that point that chronicled sort of different eras, and then I would do a panel with a couple of the people that were involved in that particular video and talk about not only what was in that clip, but just other memories, walk down memory lane. And it did feel like sort of this greatest hits night.
It was a real crowd pleaser.
Yes. Yeah. It was incredible to be a part of. So we wanted to make sure we relive that as well. So let's dive right in here to these episodes 1 and 2. Just really cool to learn about this era in Bucs history. And especially as we start out hearing about even just how the franchise was brought here and, Hugh Culverhouse buying it and what could have gone so differently about this. So tell me what just kind of stood out to you to start with the actual founding of the franchise.
Well, first of all, it's obviously told chronologically from episode to episode, right? But there were still some vignettes. Like I thought it was hilarious the way this very first episode started with the Tom Brady trophy toss and just hearing his daughter yell, "Daddy, no!" the last 6. So it was a really funny way to begin it. But then you obviously rewind to the beginning of the franchise. And I think one of the real treats for me was that they got a lot from Ron Wolf, who was, one of the architects of the team back then. I knew I was going to see a lot of clips of John McKay. Unfortunately, he's not available to, share any of his thoughts anymore, but his son, Rich McKay, did a lot of that, and that was very important. But I really enjoyed seeing Ron Wolf and just hearing what it was like as they were trying to build this team out of nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was, to me, something I had not known was what the expansion draft looked like and how much of a disadvantage it put you at. I mean, in a league now where the way that the draft and everything is organized, it is trying so hard to create this parity and give every team a chance. And man, I couldn't believe how far behind the 8 ball it forced you to start back then.
Yeah, if you look at that expansion draft now, if you're looking back in history, you could find a list of the draft and read through the names, but it doesn't really tell you much. But then when you hear Ron Wolf, who was there and who was having to decide which of these players do we want to take, and I think the quote was, it was a group of blind, crippled, and crazy.
Yeah, I was like, that's quite a quote.
Now, the funny thing is you will find little gems in there of guys that did become important to the team, but the overwhelming number of them were just guys that were maybe near the end of their career or hurt at the time.
That teams were willing to send to
But
you.
that's all you could get at the time.
And I thought it was funny. They talked about how they were just always trying people out for the team. They said even like the soda delivery guy, and they're just like, what? Literally anybody you want to try
You're a
out?
big guy.
Yeah, you can come here. And they talked about how they'd put him up in the motel just right next door, and then walk over and let's try you out.
I think it was called the Hall of Fame Motel, if I'm not wrong.
Well, that's incredible.
Because the golf course right there was called the Hall of Fame.
I mean, the irony is beautiful.
Yeah, Rich McKay was quoted saying, you were basically given no chance to win.
Yeah.
And so what they had to do, and you can also see this in the historical archives, is they had to resort to trying to get players through trades. And they actually did a really good job of that, picking up some very important players. Like, of course, the one everybody remembers is Richard Batman Wood.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of Batman Wood in this first episode or two, which was really good. Obviously, you got a bigger pool of candidates to talk to when you're talking about the 90s and 2000s and so on. So some guys really had to carry the weight, and I thought Batman did a great job and showed a lot of emotion along the way, but also spoke for his teammates, really said some of the things that others would have said if they could have been there. And I thought it was funny when they were talking about him being traded. And obviously John McKay knew him from his USC days and wanted him, but I thought it was kind of funny that Batman seemed a little insulted that he was traded for a 7th-round pick.
Yeah, he's like, come on, man. Like,
I didn't even think about that when I looked at the transaction.
We're just like, oh, we traded for him. Great.
Yeah, not only am I going to this team that is really talent devoid and is in a bad spot, but
they didn't even give much
was a 7th-round pick after 1 year in the league.
Well, he showed them. That is for sure. I knew, of course, about Coach McKay to a degree, and I had heard his infamous, of course, in favor of the execution of the team, which I think is truly one of the funniest lines of all time. It's unbelievable. And then I really loved the story of him talking during halftime. I'd never heard this before, where he's telling guys that games are won and lost in the trenches, and one of the linemen was asleep. And so he woke him up and asked him, hey, where are most of the games, lost? And the player said, right here with the Buccaneers.
Oh, gosh.
That story killed me.
Yeah.
I could not stop laughing at that. And I thought it was funny because it felt like it gave McKay a taste of his own medicine of like being on the receiving end of these creative little quotes.
Yeah, I just can't believe some of the archival footage that they had.
Unbelievable.
They had footage of the coin flip that started the that decided who got to pick first in the 1976 college draft, which ended up being incredibly important because the Seahawks probably would have taken Lee Roy Selmon if they had the first pick. So
and that's something that I know we'll talk to Trent about in making the documentary, was just what it is like to try to get all of this footage, all these interviews, like the monumental undertaking of it. And, I don't want to give away what all he talks about, but he definitely says NFL Films was incredibly helpful, but they had to reach out to so many people to provide this footage. I think it makes a massive difference in all of it. I also loved hearing about how this was not exactly a big budget operation.
Are we talking about the plane?
Yes.
I did not know this story. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is an incredible story
that basically a bunch of guys were like, I will buy my own
6
ticket
players
rather than get on this plane that I don't trust to get there.
That's crazy.
It's so funny to me. And I'm like, I would have been one of those people.
Oh,
I would have 100% been one. Like, yep,
I think I would have taken my chances.
Yeah, I would have been John Madden and driving my own bus. Like, I don't care, whatever.
But it just tells you,
Yeah, it was not, again, not having all the money and the resources you think of that are so common in the NFL today, the way that the players, were given to the team. It's honestly incredible to me. My takeaway from this was, I can't believe that just 3 years later, we have what happened in 1979.
Yeah.
That was, to me, the thing that I got the most out of this part of the documentary, was understanding how insane it is that that's all it took time-wise to make that big of a turnaround with so little resources, so little time, so little starting out power. I was mind blown.
An incredible accomplishment. And then if you want to kind of thematically tie it together, after that win, the big win, they said on the plane ride home, nobody sat down. But I think I'm talking about the 1977.
Oh, the 1979, yeah.
But that was part of the turnaround.
Yeah.
And so not only were they all happy to be flying on the plane.
Happy to be on the plane, but they were even trusting it to stand up. Didn't even need a seatbelt.
Yeah, but it was so good to see. I was fortunate enough to have been here early enough to have met Lee Roy Selmon before his untimely passing. And I can't add anything that everybody doesn't already know about him and say about him what a wonderful man he was. But getting to see this footage of him when he was really young, and he was already carrying himself very, very well, but just to see him so young and vibrant, I thought it was just, for Bucs fans that care so much about Lee Roy Selmon, I think that was a real treat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also loved the way the players talked about what the fan support meant to them during this time, that, they are losing so much. and the fans just stuck with them and were there to support it. And then it felt like such a cool reward for everyone in 79. And that, even losing at the end of that season, the fans are still there just cheering for them and so proud of them. And I thought it was so cool how emotional they all got about that, of like what the fans meant to them at that point.
Yeah, you saw both Dewey Selmon and Batman tearing up in their interviews.
Yeah, it was very sweet. I thought that was very lovely, and I think that's the kind of thing fans love to see too. I'm sure there are times that fans, they're screaming their heads off up there and going, can they hear me? Are they noticing? And I think that was such a great reminder that the players feel the support for sure.
I also loved all the Doug Williams stuff.
Oh.
I'll tell you, I have friends that used to work here for the Buccaneers and work elsewhere now, but we all keep in contact on a daily basis. And so they're very much interested in Buccaneers history too. And they're watching this documentary now. I've seen some of it before it came out, and they're watching it now, and we're texting about him. And you should the way that they feel about Doug Williams, and they weren't here during his playing days. They were here some when Doug was on the staff and as a personnel executive, but he's beloved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the things that these people, that my friends were saying, is like, Doug Williams is just the man. And then to see what he went through.
That was my take. I knew of Doug Williams, of the story of especially just, of course, one of the things that stood out to me in this was the adversity faced as a black quarterback at the time, which is devastating and heartbreaking hearing what he
They had
dealt
actual
with.
Footage of the watermelons in a box that was sent to him.
I couldn't believe they had footage of that, and I thought it was so important to show that. And I loved that they did not shy away from any of this in the documentary, talking about how you have Joe Gibbs saying, that drafting a black quarterback in the first round was going to be a huge step, but McKay had those guts. And I thought this is a great testament to McKay and the organization, that they recognize that should not be a factor, and that this man could play football, and that McKay also really defended him from a lot of, as he's dealing with taunting and slurs and getting shipped this horrible stuff, that McKay stood up for him and the organization seemed to. And the fact that he could deal with all of that and still play any kind of well on the field is to be that mentally strong. And then you hear about his wife and their new baby, and also while the contract negotiations are going on, and my heart just broke for this man.
It really humanized the whole situation.
Yeah, so like I knew about sort of the race side, and I knew about just him being this amazing football player. I didn't understand all the rest of that, and it made me have just infinite respect for him as a man and as a player. And honestly, it made me just really honored that I did get to interview him and do this panel, that it feels like this is a figure in NFL history that is the kind of person that I want to say, like, I got to interview him, and like to have had him as part of this Bucs history and the way he handled all of that and with such class and grace and strength was amazing.
Think about this too. You were talking about how McKay had the guts to draft and work with Doug Williams. Think about the fact that the Buccaneers had the first pick in that draft, but they knew they could trade down to like the 19th pick because teams would not be willing to draft a black quarterback. Can you imagine that today?
It's
a potential
crazy
franchise quarterback, and you can trade down to like the 19th pick and still get him, and then get Jimmy Giles in along with that too.
And that's what I loved about it, is that I felt like the Bucs got like doubly rewarded for wanting to do this the right way. That you not only got Doug Williams, but you also got Jimmy Giles because other people were not willing to do this. And I just thought, what a perfect sign of when we focus on what matters and don't allow that to happen. Like, you get a incredible duo of players for your organization. And I didn't realize that's basically how we have Jimmy Giles, is because they just knew that side of things.
Did you know that Doug Williams had thrown a touchdown from his butt?
No, I did not.
While sitting on the ground?
I wrote down touchdown from butt on my notes, actually, because I loved it. I also was very jealous of that, because as a basketball player, the number of times I sat down and shot like in practice and thinking there may be a day where I recover a loose ball. I 100% practiced this. I know a ton of other basketball players who did the same thing, that we all thought someday I'm going to recover a loose ball and there's going to be 0.2 seconds left and I'm going to have to shoot from, and I thought, God, he got to do it.
It didn't look like he practiced it though. It just looked like he was athletic enough to be able to do that.
That's the difference, like those of us who have to practice these things versus the people who can just do it without thinking.
I knew that was on his resume, but I didn't remember ever seeing that clip. So this is the kind of thing
again,
I'm talking
to
about.
have that footage was unbelievable. And then we go into, of course, the 79 team making the playoffs. That rain game, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was wondering as they get I've seen those shots before of the kind of the waterfalls coming down the concrete steps. And I started thinking while watching this documentary, I'm like, who was holding that camera?
Yeah.
Like, who was out there in that, right down there at the bottom of this waterfall?
They had some good rain gear. This is a really good point. And I had heard of the Doug Williams curse. I didn't realize kind of what all it entailed or what kind of made up this idea that it wasn't just some losing seasons or things like that. It was the fact that you had these other quarterbacks also, like he and Vinny Testaverde and Steve Young, all going on to do things with other teams
Trent
after.
Cooper.
Yeah, that I was like, I didn't realize kind of the QB
that was a story
part of it.
around here for a long time.
Yeah, that was
kind of flipped it by getting Tom Brady, though.
Yeah, I think that
we're on the other end of that story.
I think we can say that, we've officially closed that chapter on that curse. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really interesting part. And then, man, just Lee Roy Selmon retiring. And I loved the way that both his brother Dewey and Joel Glazer kind of tied a bow on Lee Roy Selmon of how much he valued people giving back the community, and that they both kind of mentioned that this is really what made the fans love him. Of yes, he was good at football. And I felt like it was sort of a through line of our franchise history where Joel Glazer talked about the idea of that is how to most get Bucs fans to truly fall in love with you, is when you also care about the community and the people in addition to the football. And I just thought about all the characters we're going to see come after him in Bucs history. And I felt like he sort of paved the way for that and almost set Bucs fans up to expect that of your big name players of, well, if Leroy could do it. And you see, again, we'll see people like a Mike Evans later on and a Gerald McCoy and a Levante David and all of these people in my time here where I'm like, this is what makes Bucs fans love you.
I wrote down Leroy, how much he cared.
Yeah.
It really came through in the documentary.
And then, Bo Jackson, we have to talk about this. This is a wild story. I have known enough to know part of the Bucs history with it, but this was a great example, like you said, of the knowing the big parts without all the little parts. Did you feel like you learned something in this era?
Well, I knew most of it. In fact, I was interviewed for part of it. I was in that part of the documentary. And I mean, there were little tidbits along the way. And I think the big one for me is the idea that some people still wondered if Hugh Culverhouse did that on purpose.
Yeah, I thought that
and
was
we'll
so
never really know the answer to that.
And it seems like we knew what Bo thought the answer was.
We know what
whether
Bo
it's
thinks
true
the
or
answer
not,
is.
we can tell what he thought the answer was. And either way, sad, you know, it's a very sad situation all the way around. For him, that had to have been so frustrating. You're losing your amateur status and all of that. And then, man, talk about another, thing that just put the franchise farther back.
What I didn't know about that whole thing, I thought I knew most of it, was the dinner with Steve Young.
That was the biggest part.
That's one of the best stories in the first two episodes to me.
Yeah, and man, Steve Young, what a great storyteller he is.
He did.
I could listen
some other
to him
stuff
forever.
too, but Steve talking about how he's sitting there with Bo, and I guess they must have been separated for a little bit, and Bo Jackson tells him, I'm not coming here.
Yeah.
And then in the subsequent weeks, Steve Young couldn't make anybody believe him.
Yeah, he's like, I swear, I promise.
He said he's not coming.
He really seems like he's not coming.
And then Steve's like, what? But they wouldn't listen to me, so.
I tried.
Yep.
Yeah, that dinner. Can you imagine watching, like if you're in that restaurant and then to hear what happens later on, to see the Bucs draft him and him not come, and you have been in the restaurant and watch Steve Young and Bo and Culverhouse all eating there. Yeah. I'm like, it just sounds like such out of a movie. That's what I took away also from the documentary overall, is how many moments where if I didn't know they were true, I would say they weren't believable, that they seemed too like a movie. Yeah. They're just like, that's such an incredible
And we're going to
moment.
get another story. We don't have to talk about it yet, a little later on, about the dinner with Tony Dungy and people being outside on that one. And then,
I didn't know about that.
I didn't either.
That sounded like straight out of like a mafia movie.
Yeah. You probably want to wait till we get to that part, but there was some stuff there that I was like blown away by.
So as we talk about Steve Young, I thought, there's some things in here that obviously do not reflect great on Hugh Culverhouse in these early years. But I really enjoyed what Steve Young said about how he really feels like he owes his Hall of Fame career to Culverhouse for not making, like he was going to be traded to St. Louis.
Yeah, I didn't know that story.
I didn't know this story at all. He said, I don't want to go there. You said you were going to look out for me. And so then he changed it and sent him to the 49ers. And I'm like, how the NFL history.
Sliding doors moment, huh?
Oh my goodness.
It could be so different.
And even the irony of now Mike Evans tying Jerry Rice's record and knowing that Steve Young's responsible for a lot of that part. And I just thought there's just so many ripple effects to people.
It's probably also why the whole Steve Young, all the stuff that Trent and his crew got from him, it's all like respectful. You know what I'm saying? Steve Young came here when the roster was really bad, didn't get much of a chance to succeed, and was traded away and then became a Hall of Famer. But he doesn't look back negatively on his time with the Bucs.
And it's a great lesson, right? He chose to see the positive of it of, look, this didn't work out very well, but because he did this one act of kindness for me, I got to have this incredible career. So why am I going to be bitter about this when it ended up helping set me up for who I went on to be?
And I'm glad he felt that way, because then we got that Steve DeBerg Audible story, which was the funniest part of the episode. Which we will get to.
That absolutely cracked me up. I really enjoyed everything about that. All right. Well, any other final thoughts kind of here before we toss to our next little interview?
Well, I would say one of the things that I really enjoyed about this documentary and the episodes I've seen so far is that each one ends with one or more people being asked the big question that Trent wanted to ask him: who's the greatest Buck of all time? I know I had to do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't use that footage.
And what was your answer?
Derek Brooks.
Oh, okay.
And so the answer, there's a much wider variety of answers from what I've seen so far than I expected. And I love the reasons that each person gave.
Yeah.
I think it's a little treat, like the credits start to roll and then you get that little treat. I mean, it's one of the most fun parts of the whole documentary, if you ask me.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I really love that they chose to use that during the credits. I think that's a really creative way of letting different parts of our history hype each other up and hearing the fact. I love that it's not a resounding answer, because it shows how many talented people we've had.
And the reasons why people think they're the greatest Buck.
I love
so many different ones.
All right. Well, like I said, every episode we are doing, I got a chance to catch up with the director, Trent Cooper, when he was here in town, right as the documentary was being released. So I got to sit down with him and kind of get his behind the scenes view of some of these episodes. So let's check out my first chat with him about episodes 1 and 2. Trent, thank you so much for joining us. This has just been such a cool project to get to know you on a little bit and see all of your work. And I'm imagining for you, this feels like, Christmas morning or something, getting to watch your project finally come to light.
It's a great day.
Yeah, great day.
Great day.
Great day in Tampa Bay.
We're excited to share it with everybody. I mean, only a handful of people have seen this.
And now everyone has the chance to see it. So we're going to do interviews with you for each of our podcast episodes that are covering all 10 episodes. This one, we're covering the first 2. But since this is the first one you're on, I wanted to just ask big picture a little bit of what your goal and direction for the project was. Because trying to tell a story of 50 years, there's a lot of ways you can do that. So what was the mindset of how you wanted this project to evolve?
Well, I think it started with, we wanted to honor the history, right? We wanted to celebrate what this team has done and the journey we've all been on as fans and as players and coaches and executives and so forth. So we wanted to kind of take stock in where we were and look back. But as a storyteller, that scares me a little, because I don't like history lessons. I feel like history lessons are boring. And I always say, if you want the history lesson, go to Wikipedia. Yeah. It's not what we do. So for us, for me, storytellers, editors, shooters, it's about emotion. So we want you to feel the most at any point in this story. So we want goosebumps, we want tears, we want all those things. So I think that's the goal. We want you to feel this story, and if we accomplish that, we're happy.
And speaking for myself, absolutely, you accomplished that. And I know I can't imagine the undertaking that was this project. Tell me how long you guys worked on it. Number of hours of footage and interviews. Give us some of those numbers to help people understand just how huge this was.
I should do a better job of quantifying it, because it was just a lot. But it was, so it's a year and a half. And I know that we did 100 interviews. Very proud to say that Tom Brady was the 100th. I think Coach Bowles was the 99th. But that's a lot of interviews. Mm-hmm. And these interviews are not 5 minutes long. These are 3 hours, 4 hours. People really have a lot to say, a lot of ground to cover. We take people on these emotional rides. So once you have all that material, and every bit of it's amazing, then you have to figure out what to do with it, right? So we had a total of 6 editors who were full-time for almost a year. And they would all work on different episodes, and then they would kind of jump off, and one would help another, and they were kind of cross-pollinating a lot. And it took a while to kind of figure out what's the cream of the crop here. We got to weed out anything that doesn't make you feel stuff, right? And then we got to weave it all together and take you on the ride, and that just takes a lot of time. But I think we edited for about a year. We shot, I think there's a total of 90 shooting days. It's big. It's a big project.
So as you're going to go do one of those interviews, like you said, it's going to be, 4-hour-long interview, and you have just one shot at it with most of the people in the documentary. You have one shot at this interview. How do you plan to prepare for that? Where I'm sure in a lot of ways, some of the interviews would influence the others of you learn something that now you wish you could ask this person. How do you plan for that to try to make sure you really get at everything you would need from that one person?
I feel like I do everything in layers, right? So I make a first pass at questions that are just, these are the big things I know we have to hit. And by the way, like if you're going to watch this series, we're going to play the hits.
Yeah.
You think we're not going to do the Rondé Barber interception?
Right.
We're going to do it.
Yeah.
But we're going to give it to you in a way that you've never seen it before. And we're going to give you sides of the story you didn't know, angles, perspectives, and we're going to make you feel it in a different way. It's like, what are we doing with music? So even the hits that you already knew, we're doing that. And then it's like, what didn't we know? And how do I write a question about something I didn't know existed? So I'm leaving room in my interview to fish a little bit and to play. And so a lot of it is, what did I know as a fan? Mm-hmm. A lot of it is, what do I need for the rest of our story? What do I want to fish with? What do I want to experiment with? And then it's a lot of listening in the interview. So, you ask somebody about, like I might say to somebody, hey, Coach Bowles, this is a great example. Hey, Coach Bowles, I just want to learn a little bit about your story and, what made you want to get into coaching? And I know Coach Bowles has the history with Arians.
And Arians, yeah.
At Temple. I knew that. Mm-hmm. Had no idea that the reason Todd Bowles is in coaching is because of Doug Williams.
Yep.
No clue.
And I bet most Bucs fans wouldn't know that either.
Blindsides me with this in the interview. And then, of course, I'm like,
yeah, we got to dive into that.
Let's go here, right? So that's like a perfect example. Like, fish a little, and then when you hear something, know when you're on the fish, and go catch about 10 of them right there because they're biting.
Yeah, you got to be able to listen in the process too, not just be thinking about that next question. I think that's a great example of it. As we now kind of dive into this episode 1 and 2, of course, these are the earliest days of the franchise. Yeah. What were the challenges of telling that story when a lot of those characters may not be around anymore to talk to, or just it's so much further removed from recent history as compared to, later episodes, you're talking to people that are still here in the building, a lot easier to access and get to. So whether it be the people you're trying to interview, the footage you're trying to get, what was the unique challenge of going back that far?
It's funny. I would say less challenge, and here's why. The footage is so great. So Steve Sable from NFL Films was in love with the birth of the Buccaneers. He spent a lot of time down here shooting, and the volume of killer images all shot on film, nostalgic. It's all there. So we had no problem with the images. Lee Roy's no longer with us. Coach McKay is no longer with us. So that was tough, and sad. But we have Rich McKay, who experienced this as a young, college-aged kid, a senior in high school. Like, that perspective was awesome. So we got to meet John McKay through his son, but we also had great archival on John. So not a huge problem there. Lee Roy, I wish I had more. It's not because we have plenty. He's in this. I just want to know him more. Like, I grew up loving Lee Roy Selmon, and just the fact that he's not here with us, it's just such a bummer. I would have sat with him and just loved every second.
That would have turned into a 10-hour interview, I imagine. So Doug Williams, thankfully, someone you are able to talk to about it, and I just find his story arc and involvement, even whether it be the Bowles part we didn't see coming, or there is so much meat on the bone. I feel like you could have done just a whole documentary 10-part series on Doug Williams and his story. What did you want to focus on, and what did you maybe learn about specifically just trying to tell his story?
I think what maybe a lot of us didn't know. We knew there was a contract dispute. We knew that Doug laid it on the line for this franchise. We knew how tough he was. We knew what a gamer he was, what a talent he was. And then one day we didn't have him anymore. And I think as fans, and I was a little kid when that happened, I was devastated. how can we not have Doug Williams anymore? I mean, he was my first jersey. You know, I'm in the backyard and I'm, you know, my brother was Doug Williams and I was Jimmy Giles, but I had Doug's jersey. And we didn't have him one day, and we're all devastated. And we know that it's about money and all of that. And so I wanted to dig into that. I didn't realize how close we were. The gap in money wasn't that much. We should have been able to get that deal done. I mean, it's like lunch money. So it was a disrespect thing, which made me really angry. But what I didn't know is what was going on in his personal life with his wife and his newborn baby.
Yeah.
And you talk about his entire world kind of crumbling in that moment. And it's just so sad and unnecessary and heartbreaking. But it made me love Doug even more. And, you know, we talk about what this series is. It's more than anything, it's a great story. And there's redemption for Doug. There's redemption for the Bucs. And you feel it. You don't feel it in episode 1, but we get there.
We get there.
We get there. And I'm excited for you guys to kind of discover that the way I did.
Yeah. And you mentioned the lesser known stories of there's the Rondé pick six that everybody knows the moment, but there are a lot of, to your point, lesser known characters, stories.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought this, in episode 2, you know, some things that people don't typically associate with the Bucs, Steve Young, Bo Jackson, some of these names of people might have known, again, to your point, the bullet on the Wikipedia that they were there. What was it like to tell some of those stories that are not the people that are the most associated characters with the Bucs and fold that in?
I think Steve Young blew us away. I remember talking to Ed Glazer where I called him when it was over. I said, I think this was really good. I think you're going to be And then when he watched every minute of the interview, he watched every minute of the Steve Young interview like 5 times. He loved it so much. We could have literally just played that interview.
Yeah.
And you just give it an episode of, like, he was unbelievable. The stories he tells, he's so funny, so animated, he's so passionate. But what was cool about Steve Young is that he wasn't mocking the you know, Keystone Cops of it all. He was very clear. We were not losers. We were losing. Mm-hmm. We were not losers. He looked around that locker room. He saw James Wilder, the toughest son of a gun he ever played with the possible exception of Ronnie Lott. Now that's a high compliment. Mm-hmm. And you know, the lineman and the tight end and he knew we were close. He knew we had the guys. We just didn't have the culture. And when he got to San Francisco, he understood what culture was, and that's when it all clicked with him. So you translate that into Bucs language. When Tony Dungy arrived, and prior to Dungy, the Glazers and the culture shift, we had the culture, and suddenly we're the culture and the players. And I kind of learned that from Steve. I've been working in this game like you for a long time, and I'd never thought of it that way. But you can have the players, but if you don't have you need the players, you need the coaches, and you need the mojo and the culture. He called it something else. He called the coaches the scheme, and he called it might have been the mojo that he said, but you need that sort of
the special sauce kind of thing. The special
sauce, and we had it when Dungy arrived. We got it.
And then I'm going to ask you these questions for each of our podcasts here, because to me, what I'm so curious about is how do you make the choices of what you don't include? There are infinite stories, infinite moments in these interviews that I imagine that's the hardest part, is the cut down to what you're including and not. For episode 1 and 2, in terms of the whole start of the franchise, kind of through those late 80s, what do you feel like were some of the hardest decisions you had to make of what didn't make it in, when I'm sure you're like, I could have done a 10-part thing on just this era?
I try to keep it simple. I and I say I, but it's really we. There's just the editors are so good, and we're just constantly talking about this, and we're experimenting and we're trying things together. But really, the bar is, does it make me feel something? So usually the antithesis of emotion is usually details. When you start bogging down in details, everything flatlines. So and that's true about podcasts too. Get into too many details, everybody change the channel. So, and then there's usually, if you don't have a rise and a fall, or a fall and a rise, or a double rise. This is all like the essence of storytelling is the shifts and the swings. So if you don't have that, get rid of it. And you have to just know that it is okay if you don't include everything.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as people start to see this, the first thing they say is, "I can't believe you didn't include blank."
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, I didn't include it because that episode would have flatlined, and I'm not going to let that happen. There's not a false note in this thing if I do it right. You go on a journey. So a lot of it is just about feeling.
Yeah. And then finally, episode 1 and 2, what are the things unique to those episodes that you hope that fans take away from those episodes about the start of the franchise through that late 80s period? Yeah. What was those two in that era? What did you want people to take away?
I think the epiphany for me, and by the way, I want you to have the experience I had, right? That if we're doing this right, you're feeling what I'm feeling, either when in the interviews or in the editing process or whatever. Big takeaway for me is, yeah, they were 0-26, but they were building something. Beneath that story, Ron Wolf, John McKay, Wayne Fonts, they were working on something, and they were building something that it was going to take time, but it was going to pay off. And you really understand that was happening beneath the surface. I think that's really cool. And then the other big takeaway for me is what a treasure Leroy and Doug were. And Leroy, and for very different reasons. Leroy is just, if you're gonna start a franchise, that's the guy. Like, first pick, no question, no brainer, and he's the guy you want to build the whole culture around. And he did not disappoint. And I think you start to learn all the different ways that he was magnificent. And then with Doug, what's so great about Doug is he's just a winner. And when a winner walks into the building, it's undeniable. Like, oh, we're not losers anymore. That guy will get on his back and we can go. And it was cool to see and super proud that like he's in our DNA. Cool.
Yeah, it's very true. And I love the way you put that, of in our DNA. Like,
yeah,
that's something I thought I noticed in these episodes, is the way that, for me, getting to watch them all kind of in a short time span, that you see the way that things that happened early on, I'm like, oh, this now gives a lot of context to this later. That what is that DNA?
Oh, yeah.
And then how that affects who you grow into, of all the things that make up who you are, and the way it influences the whole rest of the organization, the history, the fandom, all of it. And I think it's a really cool way to get to watch all of it.
Well, you start to see the patterns, right? When this organization gets it right, they do a couple of key things, right? They build from the ground up with the draft, and they draft character.
Yep.
And they draft just dudes that love football, right? So when you think about the 1979 team that was this close to a Super Bowl 4 years into their expansion, who did they draft, and what was the nucleus, and what was guys like Batman Wood, character. I mean, I'm sure you interview him and all that. Like, you could still build a defense around him right now.
Yeah.
Because you want
to run through a wall for Batman.
Run through a wall for him, and he's such a great human being, but he's a warrior. Leroy and Dewey, character. Jimmy Giles, character. Doug, character.
And good character and characters.
Yes.
That's what I also love about this doc.
Mark Cotney.
You got both. Yep.
Mark Cotney, fantastic human being and just a warrior. And so then you start thinking, how is that similar to what we had in the Dungy Gruden era? And it's very similar. They draft these ballers that also have that character, and then they build the whole thing around that.
I love it. Well, Trent, thank you for the time here, and I'm so excited to continue to get to interview you as these episodes go along and go on this journey with you and the Bucs fans along the way. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Just great stuff from Trent. So appreciated him taking the time, and just can't wait to hear even more of it as we go through all these different episodes. And he just has such a unique viewpoint on making this, and what a daunting task. I just can't even imagine trying to tell 50 years of history. What kind of stood out to you about what he said?
I think the number one thing that jumped out to me is he was describing, I guess, his process or his goal. And he says his goal wasn't, and I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
wasn't to produce a history lesson.
Yeah.
That he wanted to make you feel. Mm-hmm. He wanted to make the people that he was interviewing feel. And he wanted to get those feelings out. But the funny thing to me was he kind of did give me a bunch of history lessons.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not what he was trying to do. So you get that by the things you didn't know that fills in the blanks, and then also the way it made you feel and the way it's making the people on the screen feel. And I mean this in the best possible way. I don't mean he, because he has a whole crew. I mean, he said he had 6 editors spending countless hours going through everything and deciding what to keep and what would stir emotions. So I think they did a great job, and I mean that as a big compliment. I did get a history lesson, and that was part of what made me have feelings about this.
Yeah, they did it in the way that wasn't the dry history lesson of anyone who hated history class in school, that you're like, oh, it's just dates and names and like, but we all know history is fascinating and should be interesting. And that's when it's done well. Yeah. To your point, yes, you get a history lesson, but you also feel and you understand, and it all flows and makes sense. And yeah, I completely agree with you.
I would also say, he said at one point, now these interviews, they weren't 10 minutes long. I can vouch for that.
You can vouch for that. Yeah. How many hours were you interviewed? 8 hours you were interviewed.
Over 2 sessions.
Golly, that's just crazy.
And also, I wanted to tell you, I thought your question to him about how he prepared for and then reacted to the scenario where he's interviewing one person.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead to questions for another person, but what order are we interviewing them in?
Yeah.
And how do you handle that? I thought that was a really insightful question, and the answer was really good as well. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's funny because it's something I've experienced where when I've been doing stories, I'll interview someone and then I'll interview the next person, and they give me something that now I'm like, well, dang it, now I want to go back and ask them that, but I already interviewed them.
Exactly.
So yeah, I knew to understand how complicated that can be. All right, well now, we talked about a little bit how we had the Raise the Flags premiere event at the Tampa Theater earlier this season, and I just really wanted to showcase small little clips from some of those moments because it was an incredible night. And I gotta again reiterate that the entirety of these panels are being put on the Buccaneers YouTube. Depending on when you're watching this, I think they should all be up. Maybe they're not quite up yet, but I know at least the Jimmy Giles and Doug Williams one is already on the Buccaneers YouTube. So just wanted to go ahead and show this quick little clip from sort of the end of our little panel session. How about a favorite memory from the season? What is something that stands out to you? Doug, I'll let you start.
Well, for me, it would have to be the playoff game against Philadelphia because nobody in the National Football League and I guess in the country other than our fans gave us a chance to win. And we was fortunate enough that week, we felt like we was going to win the football game. I don't know if you remember when Jay Kennedy was on doing TV during that time. I remember when she told me, she said, I'll make a bet. If you all win this game, I come cook dinner for you. So the first time I ever ate broccoli and cheese, Jane Kennedy cooked it. So that's exactly what happened.
Was it life-changing? Is that why this is your favorite memory?
Eating broccoli and cheese.
I knew it. We got to the heart of that memory, I can really tell. Jimmy, how about you?
Well, for me, it was the first time Doug threw me 2 touchdown passes.
Ooh. That's a good memory.
I was always open.
Is this news to you, Doug, that he was always open?
Hey, I've heard it before.
Yeah. So I loved getting to talk to them, and this is a tiny clip. Obviously, we talked about far more serious things throughout the whole thing of all the memories and stuff, but I loved these memories, and just I loved the relationships between the two of them, the relationships with other people as part of the organization, and of course, Doug was, having to hear that Jimmy was always open, which sounded like he'd heard a few times before.
I think those two were very confident players.
Yes.
Back in their playing days. That comes through.
Yeah.
And also broccoli and cheese is very good.
I mean, right? It's a good memory. It's a good point. But yeah, I just loved hearing their stories and the two of them. And they even talked, again, you got to watch this whole panel online, but they talked about playing, that Jimmy mentioned playing against him in college and seeing just like how thankful he was to be on the same team with him instead of going against him. Mm-hmm. And we got to just dive in even deeper than, because like you said, this documentary, people were interviewed for hours on end, and you only had so much that can get used. So it was very fun to hear from the two of them reminiscing and how much it meant to them. All right. Well, again, we just want to remind everybody to go check those panels out on YouTube. If you have not already seen the entirety of the documentary, go to Amazon Prime. We are going to have another one of these episodes next week. So this was about episode 1 and 2. Next week, we will talk about episodes 3 and 4. So we hope you come back here for this Raise the Flags podcast.